part 2 of my episode on the Academy Award-winning animation movie Soul. And joining me today is the production designer on the movie, Steve Pilcher. In addition to Soul, his credits also include Finding Dory, Brave, Quest for Camelot. He also worked on The Bee Movie and Shrek 2. And now, without further ado, here's my interview with Steve Pilcher. How did you start as a production designer?
Well, it's a little bit of a longer story, but I was in fine art and I started to do gallery shows when I was 19. I was living in my mom and dad's house, of course, and my dad said, maybe you'd want to do an art show because I didn't find anything at college I wanted to do yet. So I worked on an art exhibition, like a solo art exhibition, and I did that. And it basically sold out it took me about a year. And then I got asked to show at a national gallery at Hamilton, Ontario in Canada. I'm Canadian. And then I showed there and I was about 21 when it was finished and I sold that show out. But I still wanted to grow. And I was interested in all these other things. Like I was interested in animation, illustration and all these other things too. So I moved into illustration and I worked in illustration till I was about 40 years old. And then I sent my portfolio down to the States and to see if I could find some work maybe in animation. And then I got some work right away with the Croyers, which was a couple of turned out to be really great friends. And they gave me some work and they wanted to work with me right away. And then I worked at Warner Brothers. They asked me to come down and work in the States. So my new bride, my new wife, and I moved down. And then I started as a visual stylist. So they have all kinds of titles, but basically doing the development work and developing the film. And I've done art direction or production design since I was 40. I was an illustrator until 40 in Canada, then moved down to the States and work in film now. And I've been doing that ever since. And I would say I'm an artist first and a filmmaker sort of second, or an illustrator second, but I love doing my own art. So I do this and I do my own art, which is a little bit of it's around me here. And whenever I get time, that's what I do. And maybe after another film or two, I might spend a lot more time doing that.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and that's so cool that you also create your own art too. That's probably help. Does it help you a lot, like when you're also designing stuff for movies? Does it like give you good practice?
Yeah, for sure. You should always, you should always be growing as an artist or even as a human being in all these different ways. And I find even when I'm in animation, I came in and a lot of people don't really know who I am because I was 40 years old when I came in and I was an illustrator in another country. So, but I've made a lot of friends and I've enjoyed it a lot. I love the collaboration, but there's a part of me that also loves my privacy to really work on more personal things that I love. So
Yeah.
I have to have that. And I tell artists that I go, if you're not really enjoying this collaboration when you're working on these things and you go, where's my voice? Make some time out for your own voice. Listen to that little voice, just like you are. Things that you want to do, listen to that and make some time for that. 10 minutes in a day. It can turn into an hour or two. And before you'll feel so much better because you're really listening to what your soul needs.
Yeah, that's a good connection. Yeah. And I know that you do a lot of animation movies. Do you have a particular interest in production design for animation versus production design for live action?
Well, I haven't worked in live action. What I liked about animation was that everything has to be invented. I like it when it's challenging, when it's more imaginative. I like it when I'm on a film and they don't know what it's going to look like. That's one of the things that attracted me to Soul because I didn't know what it was going to look like in The Great Before and
Yeah.
and all these places that are in a soul world which you can't see. And I said, I like that. Now I know the real world, and a lot of it takes place in the real world, like in New York. And that can be researched, that can be found. We can stylize, caricature. Then we want to get a contrast between the two worlds. But for me, I love things that are from the imagination and that are imaginative, and then you get to make them feel like they're real.
Yeah.
even if it won't look real. You want the audience to let go and just enjoy it and hopefully be enchanted by it.
How do you lead design for an animation movie? Like, do you work closely with the like director, the actors, or who do you work most closely with?
Sometimes I get to meet the actors if they come in to look at the art, or if they're getting asked to do some voice work.
Uh-huh.
I met a few artists like that. That was really cool. Um, but it's not really the part that I'm involved with. I'm very closely involved with the director, of course,
Hmm.
and the producer, and also the writer. Recently, I really enjoy that. The closer I am with them and head of story, it's basically like you were saying, Sienna, earlier, everything being interconnected. The more open the communication is, and the more free and open that communication is with, hey, Pete, I have an idea in the hallway, or Steve, we just thought of something. What's your thoughts on this? And I go, I love that. And most of our meetings sometimes are in the hallway. We're just walking by and I'll go to one of the other leads in the other departments, the character department lead. I'll say, hey, Jeremy, something just changed today. We should probably think about this and this and this, or I have an idea. Let's get together for 5 minutes. With collaboration with all these different people, I have an art team. I like to keep it kind of small. When it's at its biggest, it might be about 11, maybe a little more, but
Hmm.
usually 7, including myself. And we have a couple of coordinators, similar to live action in terms of the structure of things, but different too.
When I watch animation movies, it's kind of cool because you can take someone's voice and then you could just make a character like in like that's like totally from scratch and doesn't have to look anything like that person. It could just be anything. It could be anybody's voice and you can make any character, which is I think is really cool. And you've worked on so many amazing films, one of them being the award-winning movie Soul. What point were you brought into the process?
Well, I was in between shows. I just finished doing Finding Dory, and so these films are very demanding of your time and your energy, and it's not a very linear process. Sometimes I'll wake up at 3 in the morning trying to solve a problem. Most of the things I solve are very early in the morning with my eyes shut. I, I can visualize it, and I can actually kind of construct it in my mind if it's a 3D thing, and I also start to think about possible solutions. But anyway, I was in between projects and I was working for a few projects at Pixar. I had my own, sort of little room and my for doing our work in digital work, and I was helping out a few different shows. And then Pete Docter and Dana, the producer, and Pete Docter, the director, came to me and said, "Steve, we're wondering if you'd be interested in working on Soul, because we communicate with each other." And I go,
Mhm.
"Sure, let me take a look at it a little bit." Like it's a little more request based, and you know what I mean? It was a little more like that. It's changed a little bit since then, but and there's a little bit of a competition sometimes between which film goes next. It was Luca that's out now.
Yeah,
Was
I watched Luca, yeah.
Yeah, it was going to go, I think, in the place we were supposed to go, and we were working, and then they just moved our show first, and we went, oh, so then it really cut the timeline down. It was
Hmm.
one of the fastest films I've made. The actual production was 2 years. Usually it can be 3 to 4.
Hmm.
And when I worked on Brave 7 years.
Wow, that's a
So
lot.
live action it's higher paced, much shorter time, except when you're doing post.
Was the script already finished when when Pete Doctor came in and asked if you wanted to like work on it?
Not even close, not even close. It it had the basics, obviously, of the idea, and
Hmm.
there was a treatment and a script, and Pete worked on that in an evolutionary way with the writers and with Kemp and then all the feedback between art and story, the writers and Pete. It evolves constantly, literally through production. That's what makes them really hard sometimes. Right to the end, it's always shifting and changing whenever it can. And I always try to keep up as open-minded as I can, and make the director feel as comfortable as possible as he or she is changing the ideas. And I
Hmm.
try to make it better than what I had. And I try to keep it really flexible, but still make it work as a whole. So you have to think about it like you're inventing and creating a world, and you're always talking to the director and proposing the ideas. So it's
Mhm.
very collaborative. And Soul was the most collaborative animated film that way that I've ever worked on. But it was intense. I won't fool you. Very stressful, very intense, because you're throwing out things and a new idea comes in. You go, okay, how are we going to do the hall of everything? We don't want to put color all in there because that's too much like Earth. So, so I came up with a plan of keeping things more like everything the opposite of Earth, translucent, sort of colorless.
Yeah, remember seeing that when I was watching Soul, like how it was like almost like it had like when they went into Hall of Everything and they saw like the cakes and the pizza, like it had the colors, but they were like much more toned down and muted.
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that. That's pretty cool. And then if you interact with it, it can gain a little color. But if you're not interested in it as a soul, with it looking for personality,
Yeah.
purpose, or whatever you want to call it, um, it'll just fade away. It won't be interesting to you. If you grab a basketball and you love basketball, it'll get some color in it. We just
Uh,
want to put a little bit of color in it. And then after they try it and they love it, their little personality badge would change, and then they have the desire to go to Earth and live a life.
yeah.
So I thought that was we're trying to come up with simple solutions that you could sort of get pretty quickly, and hopefully the audience got them.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely got it. I thought that was actually a really good idea too. Like separate it so you're not on like it doesn't feel like you're on Earth, but you're like in the great before. And I read a lot of the consideration that went into the design for the Great Beyond and the Great Before, and creating worlds that were easy for kids to understand. Where did that start? What and how did you do that?
Um, it's almost like for kids for sure, but also the child and everyone. There's certain things you want to make it very simple and gettable when it's something very complex, and potentially you can get very intellectual with it. You can get very, very deep with it. But at the bottom, when you pull out of that, it's got to be like, what do we really want to say here? Well, it's the great before. So, in other words, you do a lot of thinking, Sienna, about it, and you think, okay, what is a childlike color palette that's not like Earth? Is something that's kind of like soft, let's say, very simple, appealing colors like blues and pinks. And if
Mhm.
you mix those together, you get violets. Nothing on Earth is really purely like that as a building or a hill or whatever. And if it's the great before, that sort of infers that it's early, and it's crib-like, it's childlike, it's morning, it's the beginning. So let's put it in a pre-dawn state with light. So it's always like morning, just before morning, before sunrise. And then let's make it really soft. These are all childlike things, but they're very appealing. So we
Yeah.
make the hills soft and little particle-like things. It's almost like cotton batony a little bit. And the little souls the little souls are soft, so it can't be hard for them. It has to be, you have to separate them, and it can't be more complex than them. It has to be simple shapes. That's the sort of way I sort of approach it holistically with color, keeping it away from Earth, making it really gettable. You can see there's hills, a little bit of trees that are like cypress design. So it
Mhm.
makes you think of Greek philosophy. It's association. When you
Yeah.
design a shape, when an audience sees it out of its original context, like if you see Athens and you see cypress trees in Athens in Greece, you go, oh, I know where that is. And I think of philosophers and I think of Greek philosophy and all these things. And you go, oh, if we bring a little bit of that philosophy into that world, it raises the intelligence association that
Mhm.
there's a higher level of something going on. So everything is associations, like with color, childhood, softness of a pillow, softness of a little teddy bear. The things that you love, and every child knows that, and every human being that's been a child knows that. So that's what that is. It's evoking those things. And then you have to make sure it's telling the story. So anyway, we had all these thoughts as we were moving along, and we came up with ideas as we go. If you become a mentor, or if you live a life on Earth and you want to mentor some little souls, we kept the eye color that you got as a human being and brought that back in when you're a mentor. But everything else is still the same, like the soul, like simple childlike body. but you're a little bit taller, and you might bring back Sienna. You might come back with your baseball hat
Yeah, and I
or
remember
your
that
ponytail.
Joe comes back with his hat and his glasses.
Yeah,
And like you said with like the soft thing with the great before, I remember always like when Joe keeps trying to go to Earth, then he falls back down. It's so like the grass looks like when he hits it, like just looks so like warm and like soft and fuzzy. So
yeah,
that's like so satisfying to me to see him, and he's not like dropping on the hard thing. He's just dropping softly on the grass.
yeah, totally. Yeah.
So you talked a lot about the great beyond and the great before. But what about the city? How is that like designing that?
Well, that was really fun. Completely in a different way because before the pandemic came, literally months. It was I think September, October, the year in 2019. We went to New York
Oh,
and flew there for about I think it was about a week, maybe a little less. And we went to a lot of jazz clubs at
mm,
night. And we walked in all these stairs going down jazz clubs at night, looking how small they were, but looking at the artists in there and all the people gathered in there, and looking at, I'm looking at the architecture and the surface of the walls and the floors and what's it made of and the colors and how do they set up their stages? Are they wood? What is the background they generally use? Is it red velvet curtains? Yeah, a lot of the time. The walls black, yeah, to absorb light. How many lights do they have up there? What's is there scaffolding? What are they drinking? Water and stuff? Yeah, they're into health a lot. What are the tables like? What's the lighting like? So I'm observing all that, and then we're doing drawings of the jazz musicians in the jazz club too. It was super cool. And
uh-huh.
then when I'm out on the streets, I'm looking at the sidewalks of New York. I'm looking for what makes New York unique from
Mhm.
other cities. What makes it unique from the soul world? It's the hard tactile surface, it's the sidewalk, it's all the history of people, their love of chewing gum. If you look at New York, you'll see little black spots of where gum was. So
Uh-huh.
we got to get gum on the sidewalk, guys. We got to get gum. And everybody laughs about it, but and what in a good way. They're laughing. Go, Pilcher wants gum. We got to get gum on there and all that. And I go, awesome, looks great. Because don't forget, when Joe is a cat, he's going to be down about a foot from the ground. We're going
Yeah.
to see a lot of that. Let's make it feel like New York. We have like there's pizza shops, and we went to had New York authentic pizza. And then you look at the lighting at night, and look at all the apartments. We went to places where they have air conditioners in the window. That's really important for East Coast. Um, the weather. What does the seasonal weather changes do to the sidewalk? It cracks stuff. What does
Mhm.
it do to the cars? There's salt and sand that's put on the roads. So you're thinking of everything that it gives you. You're recreating New York from scratch. You're building all the buildings. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff. So I use my iPhone and I take lots of pictures of things that people probably think I'm strange taking pictures, like trash cans and newspaper stands, sidewalk edges, manhole covers, the texture of the sidewalk, texture of the road, brick buildings, what kind of brick building. You're taking all this in, and then you're constantly researching it. So when I come back, we want to make sure that when the people of New York watch the movie, they go, they got it.
You also worked on Brave. What was that experience like? Were there any memorable moments?
Oh yeah, I mean, all these films have lots of memorable moments with people, with achievements. I could tell you one on Brave for sure. Um, we're working on the forest. I love nature and I love working on the forest and stuff like that, and or anything really imaginative. Those are my favorite things, fantasy and nature. And we were working on the forest, and for a long time, the moss on the trees and the moss on the ground looked kind of like steel wool, green steel wool. And it didn't move. And it was just like, oh man, can we make this soft? Or is there any way we can do it? And we need to figure that out. And there was one fellow named Inigo, who is genius with math. And I did these little brushes in Photoshop where you can create a brush and you can scatter it. And I did all these little ink drawings of moss at
Hmm.
at a microscopic level. If you look at moss, the shapes are like little spidery shapes sometimes,
Hmm.
fluffy little shapes. And I had all these brushes, and I could paint the moss with scattering this these shapes in Photoshop over top of some broader shapes of painting. And it
Uh-huh.
looked very soft and they got a complex degree of color. And we had all this reference. And I showed it to him and he went, let me see what I can do. And he went away and he did all this math. You should see it. It's amazing what he did with code. And he just blew me away. I mean, we looked at the moss, all of a sudden it was all on the trees. You could push it, it was soft, it would blow in the wind, and the color was amazing. I go, that's amazing. Now, a
Mhm.
lot of people don't know that. They know a lot about the hair, because that was another great moment of working with Merida's hair and figuring out the curls, how long and
Yeah.
how wide and how they fit on the head. I remember doing a diagram of where they go on the head
Uh-huh.
with working with the hair groomer, and we got it pretty fast. It took a while to perfect it, like a couple of years to keep perfecting it. But those were my two probably biggest breakthrough moments, I think, on Brave that were really important.
Wow, that's so cool. And is there one design from your movies that stands out to you the most?
That's one design. Hmm. Not really. There are certain things that I like that were designed that I enjoy, um, and all for different reasons. I really love forests. So when I worked on Shrek 2 first, I really loved getting into that forest to sort of help sort of get that to a new place,
Uh-huh.
because that all the organic stuff is really tough to do in CG. CG is great at math and it's great at replicating things. So you have to be careful of repetition. So I like complex things, but I like to simplify them so that the audience just feels it and doesn't notice that it's very complex. So the Forest in Brave, the Ring of Stones in Brave, the Witch's Hut was really fun to design in Brave. The Great Before, and I really like the Great Beyond,
Mm.
because that was very, very simple.
Yeah,
And we
well.
were trying some different things, but the idea of that was like we always read about a black hole pulling everything into it, and it
Mhm.
has sort of a slightly negative connotation because it's the black hole. It's like unknown darkness. It's like
Yeah, and the
what's
music. Yeah, and like
going
the music when they open it's like dun like
on?
you yeah,
Well,
it's like definitely dark.
what I did there was I reversed that against space and make that bright white. So
Mhm.
it's divine white light that's pulling you in this time. So it's still unknown, but it potentially extremely positive.
And is there like another movie, anime movie world that you didn't do that you'd like to visit, or if you could live in it?
Hmm, another one. That's a good question. Um, I know I'll think of it after, but I love. I actually love some of the old Disney, Walt Disney 2D films like
Oh yeah.
Pinocchio.
Oh yeah, I heard.
Pinocchio. I love Pinocchio, and I love Bambi, and I loved what's oh my gosh, I'm gonna think of them all right after. But oh, Princess Mononoke.
I don't think I've seen that one. Yeah.
Mononoke by Miyazaki, Studio Ghibli. I think that's how you say it. Hope I didn't mess the name up. You know, they did, Ponyo, Totoro.
I don't actually.
Oh, Sienna, you got to watch those.
I should probably.
Oh my gosh. You got to watch Totoro. You're going to love it.
Coach, I'm gonna write it down so I don't forget.
Princess Mononoke blew me away when I saw it. Now, I saw it in
I feel
Japanese.
like I heard my friend or someone said that once because the
Yeah.
name sounds very familiar, but I don't. I know I didn't watch it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're in for a treat, they're a Japanese based studio. Miyazaki, who's the director, and he draws all the storyboards. He does watercolors for all his storyboards, the whole film.
Uh huh.
Amazing, amazing, amazing talent. He, I think he's retired from doing films now. He kept saying he was retiring, but he kept doing them into his 80s, right? And
Yeah.
he kept doing these masterpieces. They're just so imaginative, so beautiful, very influential. But when I saw Princess Mononoke, I went, wow, that I just love films like that. And of course, Brad Bird's films, Iron Giant.
Uh huh.
Have you
I
seen Iron Giant yet?
Brad. that name sounds familiar, but no, I don't, not the movie name. I don't.
Oh, if you get a chance to watch Iron Giant,
Iron Giant. I have a lot of movies I gotta watch.
Sienna, Brad did Incredibles
Oh, that's where the name
and
from.
Ratatouille,
Yeah, I like Ratatouille. Yeah, I've watched that.
and Incredibles too. But if check out Iron Giant, that's a 2D film he did, and
Mhm.
it's amazing. You will love it.
Yeah.
I just don't even take my word for it. You
No,
will love
yeah,
that one. And
I have watched.
if you can watch Totoro or Kiki's Delivery Service,
Mm-hmm.
any
Kiki.
of the Miyazaki films,
Uh-huh.
check out some of those. One of my favorites, of course, was Princess Mononoke.
Hmm.
Loved it. I love Totoro. Love it.
Yeah, I
They're all
definitely have
great.
to check it out. I
There's
would
some.
say I would say too, back to the question, if I had to pick for the one of the movies you did, I would say Soul or Finding Dory. Because Soul, because I just love like the city, like especially like I just love like when I watch it, it feels so like city like and stuff. And I also love New York City. I live right outside of New York City, so I love going in there. And I would, or Finding Dory, because I also love underwater, ocean. I love that sort of stuff. And then I would say Wreck It Ralph in the Sugar Rush Land
Oh
for
yeah.
a movie because I love desserts and it's just I love Vanellope too. So it
Cool.
sounds like something I would like, yeah. Can you talk about anything that you're working on?
Um, Unfortunately, I can't say a lot about it. I can tell you that it's with Cuckoo Studios, which is a very small studio that just started up, and we're working with Netflix and we're working with Sony, Sony Images, who did Spider-Man and Spider-Verse, etc. And they're all these people are great to work with. I wanted a change. I worked at Pixar 15 years, and I said I want to work with some friends in a smaller studio. I just want to like kind of really focus on it and see if I can help, and for change. So I'm working with there's some Pixar people that are running it, like um, Stanley Moore and Alex Wu. And anyway, they had a really cool story, and they needed a production designer, and they were excited to have me, and I was excited to join them. And so let's try something new. I've worked on the films at Pixar for quite a while, and let's try something new. So it's a challenge that way. I
Hmm.
can't say a lot about the subject, unfortunately, because
Yeah,
we're about halfway through. I'll show you my schedule.
sure.
I make a little schedule like this.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
I started here, and we've been working on it all through here. I just black out the months. And June's almost done, so we'll be blacking this one out with marker. And
Hmm.
we're in production now, and
Oh,
we're gonna be finished, you know, 20 end of 2022,
uh-huh.
and that's a pretty normal schedule, pretty fast. But anyway, I can tell you it's imaginative, of course,
Uh-huh.
and there's some big contrasts in it. I can't tell you the subject. I would love to tell you about it. I would love to show you some of the stuff. Um, but you never know. Maybe we'll talk again. But
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
when I get it done, but we're right in the middle of it, and but I think it's going to be pretty cool. And again, the story's always shifting and changing, and we're making it better, tying it in with the visual storytelling. We're just merging it together, very much like we did at Pixar.
Yeah, definitely. And if you could live in one animated world you created, what would it be?
Um, Probably Brave.
Mm.
I probably live around the forest area,
Yeah.
and
Would you would you
yeah,
shoot like bow and arrows?
for fun and some exercise, sure. But I'd probably be out, like, I don't know, exploring the woods, looking for more mystery, maybe climbing and going into. I mean, what other mysteries are out there besides just the wisps, right?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
I love elves, trolls, goblins. I
Hmm.
love all that stuff. So like that's really fun for me. So I'd be looking for those kind of creatures or woodland friends, and then the probably painting and drawing, making paintings and creating things with the forest and that beautiful landscape all around me. That's what's fun about making these films is that you can feel like you're in those worlds, right?
Yeah,
Some,
definitely.
sometimes in theme parks, they take those and try to make them a bit. So it's about a little closer when you go in if they do a good job, right? Like at Disneyland and stuff.
Yeah, when I go to Disneyland because I go to California a lot. I went to the Star Wars land, and it's like so like detailed. They have like the Millennium Falcon, which has like every single little detail in it from the movie, so it's really cool.
I haven't seen that yet. That's pretty cool. So you live near where I used to live. I grew up in Toronto, Canada. So it's north of New York in Canada.
Uh
It's only
uh
about it's only about less than an hour flight down in New
oh
York.
wow, that's cool.
Yes,
Oh,
so I know what East Coast living's like. I know
uh-huh.
what the winters are like.
What?
I know I know what the long winters are like.
Oh yeah, this year has been very
Oh,
weird. Our spring has been very rainy, and like it's like our spring is just it's been raining so much lately, and like thunderstorming like every week. It's really weird because last year
yeah.
we didn't have that much rain, so it just changes every year. And then the last year we had like no snow days. This year we had like 3 snow days. It's like different each year.
See, you know what was fun when I was a little kid? Sometimes we would get so much snow that you couldn't open the front door, and then and then school was canceled for the day.
I
Yes.
I always imagine like if you couldn't open the front door and it was that high that you could like dig a little like ice tunnel in, and that would be like so cool.
Yeah, we had a door that like a little bit of a basement.
Mhm.
So the snow would all pile up in the back basement door, and you'd go to the door, and your snow would be right up to the window, and you go, can't get out this. Of course, we don't go it that way anyway, but normally, but there would be some big snows, and school might be canceled. You go, wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Fun for a change, right?
Yes, definitely. I want to thank you so much for doing this. I had so much fun talking to you, and I learned so much about production design in on animation, and it was just so cool to hear all that you do with it and all the interesting stories you had.
Well, thank you, Sienna. I really respect and appreciate you making all this effort to do this. I think I was very flattered and that you asked me to be interviewed, and I wish you all the best. You are an amazing talent, and I think that your love of filmmaking and your interest in growing is going to go a long way for you. So I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much, and you too. I can't wait. Hopefully, we can talk another time too. Once you can say a little bit more about your movie and stuff because it sounds really exciting, and I'd love to hear about it.
I would love to do that.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Okay, take care of yourself.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.
Hope you all enjoyed the interview. And now it's time for a quick fun fact, or what they call an Easter egg. On the subway in the movie Soul, there is an ad for Brang, which is actually the startup company Riley's dad moved to in the movie Inside Out. And now it's time to search it up. Let's see. Oh, John Roche was the Foley artist on Soul and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which we talked about a few weeks ago. But he was also the Foley artist on the movie E.T. So next time, we're going to be talking about E.T. See you then!